Hello, everyone. This is Toby, the Galactic Intuitive. How are you guys doing today? Happy Monday. Phew. I don't know about you guys, but I could use another Sunday before my Monday. Maybe a couple, maybe more than a couple. The weekend was not long enough. So many things to do. Anyway, and so many things to be. And yeah, it just went by super quickly. It was another one of those segments of time that just zooms on by. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. We are following up with the last couple of days of messages, and we're going to continue talking about separation and connection. And there is a lot of conversation in the spiritual community about separation and separation in regards to separation from like 3D and 5D in particular, and the separation becoming more apparent between the awakened or awakening and those who are not. However, what I would like to talk about is to move from that macro view to the micro view, because although, yes, certainly we are seeing that separation being highlighted in the external world, and from that macro view, like on a global collective perspective. I think it's very important for us to, because I'm kind of jumping around here, but as we are, of course, guided to have awareness of external events, but to not get anchored into them and create unnecessary stories around them, and then how it impacts our day-to-day life. The other, as we're talking about polarities, the other side of this is how we witness it and how we experience it on the macro level, so within our day-to-day life. And that isn't always with those global events. Now, certainly it can be, again, if we really attach into those. However, we may also be experiencing them on a very personal level, and it can be very subtle in that separation. Subtle, and yet something that is to have awareness of because of the impact it can have on us, I'm hearing, on a cellular level, but also on an emotional level and energetic level. And so that separation I'm speaking of is as we are continuing to ascend and expand and grow, and our frequency is shifting, our physical body is changing, all the evolutionary things that are going on, I was going to say we may find, I'm going to say we will likely find that our roles within roles and places, and this speaks back to what we talked about what the Polarians brought through in that message a couple of days ago about our responsibility for others' emotional states and for their energetic state, and stepping away from that and focusing on what we are responsible, and that's our own emotional body, and our own emotional experience, energetic experience. So the way we will experience the separation is the shifting of our roles and our placements within relationships, within communities, within friend groups, within family groups, within the workplace, because we are shifting out of that space of taking on responsibility for more than what is ours to hold, and we're no longer vibrationally aligning with that behavior pattern, that pattern of taking on more than is ours to carry, and also allowing others then the space to make their own choices freely, and to not feel restriction from us because we are trying to control a situation or micromanage it from a place of that's interesting, wanting to be responsible, or wanting to take ownership. And often that doesn't, I mean, that sounds very controlling. Ultimately, it is. That isn't always the intention, though. Oftentimes, especially for those of us who are empaths, it doesn't intentionally come from a place of wanting to control the other person. It comes from a place of wanting to help the other person. But ultimately, when that wanting to help the other person leads to wanting to fix things for them, that is a form of control, and that is a micromanagement that takes away their own free will, or attempts to. So when we step back from those behavior patterns and those beliefs, then naturally it is going to create a separation within those old paradigms in which we what am I trying to say here? In which we exhibited those behavior patterns. Does that make sense, or is that too vague? So past codependent relationships were no longer in vibrational alignment with codependency. Well, now the dynamic of that relationship shifts. And even if the codependency was subtle, you're still going to see the shift. The shift might feel subtle, but it's also going to be uncomfortable. And this also speaks to the grief that that came through in the cards with the Apache tears in the oracle reading after the Polarian's message the other day. We are leaving behind, stepping away from past versions of ourselves, but now we're at a point where we are going to feel it and see it in our physical world. It's not just a matter of us doing it internally and us experiencing it internally and on our own, but we're really going to see, and I know we've seen it up till now, but it's going to be amplified is what I want to say. I think we are going to see it across many different areas of our lives, not just like one section at a time. I think that's where the intensity comes from, is that we may experience it in multiple places in our lives. So any place where those old patterns were still present, and the thing is, the patterns can remain present within that group. However, now, and you may have been able to operate within that group, knowing those patterns existed, not actually interacting in those patterns, though, not exhibiting those patterns yourself, but still staying in that group. However, now you're going to find that you're being separated from the group. We're going to the next step here. And it doesn't necessarily mean leaving the group. It's just that it may be showing up as your role within the group has shifted. And that can be difficult too. That can be challenging to accept and to allow it to unfold organically, trusting that it is happening for your highest good, versus feeling a sense of guilt or shame or even abandonment or judgment, but trusting that these changes are happening for your highest good, and they're happening because you are aligning with a different frequency. And so in order for you to stay in that alignment, your role, your place within these groups or communities or relationships will need to adjust. And in some cases, it means a true, like, physical separation. So there is a spectrum of this experience. And I was really on a roll there, but everything just kind of stopped. I think that's it may feel abrupt that way, and it may be something that's very subtle. I think in most cases, it's going to feel very subtle. It might be something that you kind of take notice of, you have an intuitive hit on, but you're not quite sure, has it changed completely, or has the other person just gone quiet? Do they have things going on in their life? There's a whole gamut of ways you might experience this, but it feels subtle for many of us. That's because of all the work that you've done already. You have already, in some ways, you've already, well, as I said before, you've separated out of those codependent or unhealthy behavior patterns that were associated maybe with this group or this relationship, but you're still interacting, but from a new vibrational state. But now again, it's shifting yet again. It's evolving again. So it's important for us to remember this is an evolution, and this is not a going backwards, because there can be the tendency, because it can also trigger like childhood wounds or the inner child. It can touch on those things even that you've worked on, right? The thing, again, healing is not a never-ending process. This is a lifelong investment that we are making, because it's a remembering, and this is something we do across our lifetime. So it can certainly touch on those old wounds and bring things up, and it might bring things up that you don't even have memory of, because we're also unraveling these ancestral and generational family karmic like traumas and wounds and patterns and unhealthy patterns. So I know this is a lot. It's a lot, but it's also, again, it can be experienced. It's a lot to speak about in just 12 minutes, but the experience of it can be very, very subtle. But it can also have these waves of emotion that go along with it as you begin to recognize where the sense of discomfort is coming from. That it is coming from this place of, oh, okay, now I can recognize that things are shifting in this dynamic. Things are shifting within this community or this organization or this family, and I am no longer in the role I was previously that I've known for so long. It's not a bad thing. It's for your highest good. At the same time, making that shift can be uncomfortable. And in some cases, it might hurt the ego because you've been taken out of a place of, why do I want to say high standing? That's not what I was trying to say, but a place of, leadership, maybe a place that might be associated with power or the person that others in the group have looked to. However, again, the reminder here is that this is happening for your highest good. And so we're being taken out of those spaces or the relationship shifting to make room for us to then have these new experiences and new relationships and engage in new communities and new friend groups, and new workplaces, new organizations, as things begin to unfold and really open up, as we talked about in the seed germinating. Whew, that was a lot of information really quickly. So now you're aware. This is coming. I think many of you probably will begin to experience this after the first eclipse, which happens, I think it's September 6th or 7th, and that's the full moon in Pisces. I think that this is going to be a time when you're going to take note of these shifts, and it will progress through to that next new moon in Virgo. You may already be picking up on it now, and that's why I'm talking about it now. I know I'm picking up on it now, have been for the last couple of weeks, but now it's like I'm getting it to a point where I'm like, oh, okay, now I can talk about this. Now I'm understanding. So anyway, you may start to experience it now. I feel like if you're not, you will by that Pisces full moon first, no, not first, 7th, I think, of September, 6th or 7th. And then we'll have a greater understanding and awareness and acceptance, hopefully, of these changes by the next new moon in Virgo at the end of end of September. I think it's September. What day is it? If it's not the end of September, I take that back. I'm sorry. It's right after the equinox, so it's is that right? The 22nd? Yeah, I think it's the 22nd of September. That would be right. That would be 2 weeks. Okay. I think that's it. Let's pull a card. Shall we? Shall we do a card? We're going to do the Golden Future Oracle by Diana Cooper. It's a really lovely deck. And as we're talking about that separation of 3D and 5D, this is about new earth energies, and that's very much what we're talking about here. You know, it's interesting because oftentimes in the spiritual community, we talk about things from a very even some of the messages that come through in the tarot in particular, they come through from, it can be a very high perspective, which is good because, and the reason for that is because for each of us, we have a very unique experience of those energies, right? So in order to encompass the description and to talk about the energy, it has to be from a very macro standpoint, because you're describing these energies and how they can impact the collective. That's a lot of people. And each of us have a different experience of that, even if it's slightly different. Where was I going with this? So, again, when we talk about separation, it can be talked about in ways that sound very, very dramatic. And even with the tarot, a lot of times readings sound very dramatic, but that's because they're coming from that very high level perspective. When in fact, oftentimes when we look back, like if we listen to a tarot reading and it resonates with us, and then but later on, we have the experience that reading referred to. And then when we look back then, again, when we compare the actual event to the reading, the event may not be as dramatic. It might have a lot of impact on our personal life, on us as individuals, but it isn't necessarily quite so dramatic, so extreme, I should say. So that's something to keep in mind. And I feel that way in regards to the separation as well, that certainly there are extreme examples of it, and certainly when we look at it from a macro level, you can definitely see. Now we have to be discerning because there's a lot of things in the media that are illusion, and so that are we'll say building upon the separation that's occurring vibrationally in order to create even more separation, when I feel that the separation is more a matter of our personal experience, like I just talked about, and it being experienced personally in more subtle ways. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at there. Okay, so the Golden Future. Let's see what the Golden Future Oracle has for us today. That was quick. We have the 12 chakras. Follow your ascension path. These cards are so colorful and beautiful, and this light is driving me nuts. Let me see if I can make it go away. There we go. It's a little bit better. There we go. So, and this speaks to the being in alignment with oneself and with the frequency of your ascension path, regardless of all the swirling and things that are going on around you in the external world, right? Because certainly that's going to be occurring. I mean, it will be. So, the opportunity and the invitation is for us to tap into our chakras to maintain their alignment, maintain our central line of energy, and utilize that to ensure that we are staying on our individual and unique path of ascension. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you guys so much for being here. As always, I appreciate you. I am so thankful to have you guys here with me every day, and I'm sending you lots and lots of love. And I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Thank you.